Morning. Calling to order the regular weekly meeting of the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission here on January 18th, 2023. First item on the agenda is a roll call. So pleased to welcome Commissioner Ellison to the meeting. My understanding is that you were sworn in this morning and you're ready to go, right? So calling roll, Commissioner Ellison. Present. Commissioner Aguilera. Present. Commissioner O'Connell, present. Next, we'll rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the state flag of New Mexico. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the city is a symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Just revealed that in grade school, despite the fact I went to grade school in New Mexico, I didn't have to do the New Mexico flag. Okay, next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of the agenda. So commissioners, do you have any comments or discussions on the agenda that was presented to us?
I do have one item that I would like to make a motion to move to the regular action items. This is item 22-00020 UT. And so the motion would be to move that to the regular action items.
So I would second the motion to move item 22-0020 UT to regular action items. We have any discussion on that? So agree. Take the vote. It's like the voice vote works. All in favor? Aye. Aye. So we're going to move item 22-0020 UT presentation by Mr. Fisk to the regular action items. We'll take that after the other utility matter action item that's already on the agenda. Sorry for those of you in Zoom land. The next item on the agenda is a presentation of the fiscal year 2022 audit report. Roads are pretty tough in northern New Mexico today, so Ms. Mascarenas, who's going to make that presentation, is on her way in and is not here yet. So we'll go ahead and defer that item of the agenda until she's here. Next item is employee of the month. It's my understanding the presentation on that will be by Molly Chavez. Is Molly available?
Yes, sorry, commissioners, I'm on camera. I can go ahead and start with the employee of the month. I know Miranda is on her way. It's up to however you would like to move forward.
Yeah, if you're ready, let's move forward.
Okay. So the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission hereby recognizes Jordan Narvaez as the employee of the month for January 2023. Whereas Mr. Jordan Narvaez serves as a fiscal coordinator in the Administrative Services Division at the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. And whereas Jordan Narvaez has worked for the PRC for almost 2 years. Whereas his nomination states, Jordan is very consistent and reliable. He is willing to help with a number of tasks. He is great about following up on answers to questions and he's always very professional. I appreciate that Jordan seems to have a can-do approach to everything. He is absolutely integral to this agency, and I appreciate his willingness to assist. Whereas Jordan Narvaez continues to serve the PRC with dedication and great ability. Now therefore it be resolved that the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission of the State of New Mexico congratulates Jordan Narvaez on his selection as Employee of the Month for January 2023. This is well-deserved. Jordan is very personable and is always professional, respectful, and responsive to any requests. And congratulations to Jordan on this honor. And so I stand if anybody else wants to add anything.
Well, thank you for that presentation, and I can second the emotion. Jordan helped me out personally quite a bit last week, so thank you to Jordan.
Great.
Thank you, and duly recognize Jordan as Employee of the Month. Okay, the next item on the agenda is introduction of special guests. We have quite a few folks in the room here today and quite a few who are repeat guests from last week. So I don't want to imply by not introducing you that you're not special, but so thank you for being here. Is our Hans or Michael, or do we have any other guests we need to introduce?
Mr. Chair, there are no other special guests that have signed up for introduction with me. I do have a person for public comment that will handle next on the agenda.
Thank you. Okay, well, Mr. Mueller, the public comments next item on the agenda, so let's go ahead and move to that.
Sure. I did have an individual. He indicated he would be in person today, who is Mr. Jim Desjardins, who is the executive director of REIA. And so if Mr. Desjardins was able to make it to the hearing room today, I do want to give him the opportunity for public comment.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Desjardins is in the room and he's coming to the table. Floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chairman Nakano, Commissioner Aguilera, Commissioner Ellison. Great to be here. I just want to give a quick intro of our organization and just a little bit about myself as well. So I'm the executive director of the Renewable Energy Industries Association of New Mexico. A lot of folks know us by our acronym REIA. We've been around since 2004. We have 60 members and very diverse membership, everyone from New Mexico State University, Nusenda Credit Union, manufacturers, developers, solar installation companies. And we've been engaged at the commission for many years, certainly as long as I've been associated with the organization. And we were most recently engaged on the community solar proceeding and the interconnection policies proceedings. And just want to say that we were very pleased with the process and for the most part with the result. I mean, there's never anything that you're entirely pleased with. I do want to especially point out that on the interconnection policies docket, that was a 2-year long process. We had 17 workshops. It was really quite, I think, amazing that people from all over the country, people everywhere from New York to Hawaii, participated and lent their expertise and time. And so I just want to briefly point that out. And then basically just want to say that we look forward to working with the commission. And if there's any time that we can ever be of any help, we would look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Desjardins. Miss Muscari has just joined us, but I want to give her an opportunity to settle if you need it, or are you ready? Yeah. glad to see you are here and safe with the roads what they are out there today.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I sincerely apologize. It took me about 40 minutes to go a 4-mile stretch. There was an accident on I-25 this morning that I got caught in.
Yeah.
I'm here before you today to present to you the results of our fiscal year 22 audit. Our audit is due statutorily to the Office of the State Auditor on November 1st of each year. We were fortunate. We have an amazing ASD team. We submitted our report around October 20th. So we submitted about 10 days early. Again, I attribute that to our great team. And as I go through, I'll give you some of the backstory as to why I think that was such a great task for the PRC this fiscal year. But first off, I would like to point out to you all our prior year findings. I believe you all got a copy of the report electronically. So we did have 4 prior year findings, which we were able to resolve all 4 of them in fiscal year 22. We did have 1 new finding in fiscal year 22 that was related to us being unable to locate gas receipts. And unfortunately, the employee that was overseeing our fleet at that time is no longer here and was no longer here during the audit. So we searched high and low, we're unable to locate that 1 receipt, but I think going forward, that finding will be resolved. Effective July 1st, we did hire a financial coordinator position. Along with that position, we implemented a new process that requires that all fuel card logs and receipts be audited prior to payment of the fuel card. So I am confident going forward that that will be resolved. In addition to our findings, I also wanted to show you all, you're probably familiar with the fact that the State Fire Marshal's Office used to be a part of the Public Regulation Commission, and it did go away to Department of Homeland Security in fiscal year 22. As such, if you were to review our management discussion and analysis, which is also referred to as the MD&A, you will see the prior to current year analysis looks really off. And the reason for that is because of the transfer of the State Fire Marshal's Office, all of their funds, all of their cash, all of their assets. We did transfer about $4 million worth of assets. That is net accumulated depreciation. So you will see that big shift if you are trying to look at that comparison from prior to current year. Also in fiscal year 22 was the implementation of GASB 68. I'm sorry, it was 83. Wrong again. Part of this GASB is the implementation of office. We now have to capitalize our leases and amortize them over the life of the lease. GASB had been delaying this implementation because of COVID. And finally, this fiscal year, they did go forward with that implementation. As such, the PRC does lease our building. So that was the main lease for us that we did have to capitalize. We do also capitalize our copiers. The implementation was very new to the state, and we were fortunate. We have an amazing budget and finance manager, Molly Seiss, who also worked in public accounting. And so her and I were very familiar with the different journal entries. And as we were going through the direction we were being given, we kind of posed more questions to our oversight agency. And I think PRC was kind of the front runner for these entries, and we were able to get them done prior to a lot of agencies. And I attribute that to us being able to get our audit in sooner and turned around quicker, because of a lot of agencies were on the back end submitting late or submitting right at the deadline. And so it took longer to turn those around. But fortunately, we were able to get that in, get those questions addressed. And I think we did, PRC did pose a lot of questions that helped agencies, because there were some questions that we were posing to the oversight, questioning different journal entries and the proper accounting of them. And then they did switch directions. So I think we were pioneers for the implementation. With that, we also did receive unmodified opinion across all opinion units. that is the best opinion you can receive. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? No questions.
I don't have any questions, just wanted to make the comment that thank you to you and your team for your diligence and making sure that the PRC is on the right track. And I know that, one gas receipt you mentioned is, I know that you and your team are perfectionists. I think that you guys are doing a great job and we're really lucky to have you here. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, and I'll echo the congratulations on progress sentiment.
Thank you. And I will add, if you all would like a hard copy of the audit for, to help you fall asleep at night. I do have extra copies, so if you would like one, please let me know when I can provide.
Sure, that would be great.
Yeah, appreciate that offer. I'm not finding a shortage of things.
Thank you for the nice work.
If I'm keeping track correctly, the next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of prior meeting minutes. I'll just introduce that topic. We've received set of minutes for the December 28th open meeting that the three of us did not attend. And so we also have an attestation from Mr. Mueller that the minutes match his notes of the meeting that he was in attendance for. So to entertain a motion to approve the December 28th minutes.
So moved.
Have a second?
Yeah, I second the motion.
And any discussion? So I'll just take a voice vote. All in favor of approving the minutes from December 28th, 2022 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda, discussion and potential action. We've got first up a adoption of annual open meeting policy and notice for 2023. I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Smith to walk us through a document that we have before us.
Mr. Chairman. Used to Hans telling me to do that from above. Sorry, my copy that I printed out is a little small for my eyes. A number of drafts have gone back and forth between the commissioners on this, and I think we've reached a consensus point in terms of the various adjustments, I'll call it, that were made to the existing open meeting policy. The primary issue that I understand still needs to be resolved is that the commission has determined it's going to have, under this policy, it would have weekly business meetings, which would be open to the public, and it would also have what we're calling a deliberative meetings, which would consist of deliberation on adjudicated matters as permitted by the Open Meetings Act. The suggestion was to have the open meetings on Wednesdays and the deliberative process closed meetings on Thursdays when they occur. Those would not necessarily occur each week. And I think that's primarily the main issue that we need to decide is whether those days are acceptable to the commission.
Yeah, then just to remember the discussion we had last week, this is an item that there's an annual need to put in place a open meetings policy, so it is timely. Is that correct?
That's correct. We've been proceeding under the existing 2022 open meetings policy, but there's not a requirement that we do it at our first meeting of the year. So that's why the agenda still follows rather the policy that was adopted by the prior commission.
Thank you. And then just because we're a small board, I'll just open the floor for discussion. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, so I want to make a comment about the days. So I was the one who raised the possibility of looking further into whether Wednesdays are the correct day. And understanding fully that Wednesdays have been the correct day for, or, the scheduled day for a long time. And so what I would request from advisory staff would be just taking another look to make sure that Wednesdays do work, consider work as the best day, considering when the commission needs to take action on proceedings and the amount of time that staff has to prepare orders, for example. And so one consideration would be for staff to go back and just take another look to see if Wednesdays or another day would work better. And also consider what other commissions especially in Western states are doing. And part of the reason is because I want to make sure that I have enough time to be informed, prepare, read all of the materials that I need to read to prepare for the meeting. So just wanted to mention that.
Commissioner Ellison, do you have any?
I don't have a strong opinion on the matter. Obviously, having the open meeting on Mondays would not really give folks time to prepare and formulate the agenda properly, I would think. So no, and certainly it would be interesting to know for folks attending the meetings whether there's any particular day that seems to be better, but I have no strong preference.
Okay, so just to clarify what I heard, would Commissioner Aguilera, would you prefer another week to get input from advisory staff? And if that happens, I think we're okay with just continuing to roll with last year's policy.
Yes, if we're allowed to continue to use last year's policy, I think that would make sense. And I don't think staff necessarily needs to do this by next week. If need 2 weeks, I think that would be fine as well. And I think that would also give Commissioner Allison time to look at the open meeting policy, because I don't know if he's had time to look at it. And I agree with the comment that Commissioner Allison made that Monday probably does not work. I think the most likely days would be Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Thursdays. And definitely not opposed to keeping Wednesdays as the day. I just want to make sure that just because we've been doing it the same way forever, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best day. So that's what I want to make sure of. Thank you.
This is an area where I could use some procedural help deciding not to decide. We still have made a choice. Somebody told me last week, but do we need a motion to wait another week or just acknowledge that's where the discussion's at and let it roll?
Mr. Chairman, I think you could ask it for if you want to be formal, you could ask for a formal motion to table it until the commission wants to bring it back. We have such a small commission now that it's easy to reach a consensus without necessarily going through the formalities.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of an area where we'll find our footing. But so anyway, Commissioner Ellison, you're gonna.
I move to table the discussion until next week.
I second that motion.
And seeing no disagreement with that, motion carries. So we will take this up next week. There is a request out for advisory staff and frankly, anybody else who has a strong opinion to help us pick the best day, choosing between Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Is that a fair assessment, Commissioner?
That is, I would like to ask Michael a question. Is it possible without opening some proceeding for us to consider industry's comments? For example, if they email them to you, or would we need to open a proceeding? If
I guess the question would be, you mean comments from the outside on when the commission holds its meeting?
to you, yes.
Well, it would not require a formal comment. We don't normally have outside comment process on internal PRC policies in terms of adopting an open meeting policy. And if we open it up to the public, obviously has the opportunity to make a comment. So in the comment process, they can submit written comments or oral public comment. So if you want to request that, if interested parties want to make a public comment on what would be an appropriate meeting date, you could do that right now, just and request it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if anybody would like to make comment right now, that, you know, maybe we'll wait a little bit to see if anybody chimes in, but I gather that they haven't had much time to consider this, so you know, if you would like to make a comment about it at next week's meeting, that I encourage that, I guess. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. I think you discussed that issue. We have a plan for moving forward. So moving to the next item is consideration and potential approval of open meetings calendar for 2023. We've put ourselves in an awkward spot on that. The big picture on that, my understanding is it's helpful for the community that supports these meetings to have some heads up to when the meetings are going to happen. Practice is weekly, but there will be some weeks that have holidays, for example, that just makes sense to tell people with a lot of advance notice that there won't be a meeting that week. So I would propose that that'll be easier to do when we know what day of the week the meeting is going to be. So I'll just recommend that we also defer that item until we have selected the day of the meeting. Just curious if there's any disagreement with that approach.
No, so no disagreement there.
Okay, so we'll take up the consideration of and potential approval of open meeting calendar until we resolve the open meeting policy. The next item is, actually, there's two items on here. Designation of commissioner member to Southwest Power Pool Regional State Committee, and there's also a memorandum of understanding for a collaborative member of National Community Solar Partnership. We have some folks signed up to make presentations on that. I guess what I'd request is if you, in your presentation, if you could do two things, just define what the request is and then provide whether there is a urgent deadline to designate these members to those organizations. So first up, I have Mark Tupler or Ed Raukoff. I see Ed is here. So the floor is yours.
Good morning, commissioners. On this item, what we realized when we were originally looking at the Southwest Power Pool last week was there are a lot of other committees and memberships and chairs that are involved. And we're assembling a list of them right now, and we have about 10 of them. And what I thought would be a better course of action would be to present them all to you, allow you to look at them, and then take a look at which ones. There's a lot of really important ones also on the West Coast with the Western Energy Imbalance Market and several others. So
I appreciate that. In fact, I'll be interested to see the list because you know, as my email addresses become widely known, I've been getting invitations for membership on different committees or discussion groups, and I don't really want to jump in and grab those without considering what my fellow commissioners are interested in doing. So I think your suggestion is great. Are there any other opinions on that?
No, I agree completely. It'd be nice to have that comprehensive list of designations, and then we could have a discussion about how we'd like to divide those.
Great. So I guess briefly, I would like to hear from Ms. Parks about this National Community Solar Partnership, since that's on the agenda. And then sounds like we will defer these two items to a future meeting when we have a more comprehensive list to discuss.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to provide an introduction to Ms. Parks on community solar. I just wanted to give you a brief introduction on community solar in New Mexico. And it started recently with the Community Solar Act, which was signed in April of 2021. And it was followed by the rulemaking, community solar rule, which was the initial order was March 30th, 2022. And Art O'Donnell was instrumental in developing that ruling. Essentially, the community solar rule provides for a 200 megawatt cap for community solar, and that's apportioned out to the 3 utilities. There's a low income carve out as well, which is 30% of the capacity of each project. We are currently in the implementation stage. There's a third party administrator called Incline, who issued an RFP on December 1st, 2022, and the bids are due on January 31st, 2023. And I'd like to just turn it over now to the subject of this item, which is Mary Jane Parks, who will describe the 2 DOE partnerships that we are involved with right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Good morning. The National Community Solar Partnership is a Department of Energy program, and their goal is to enable the equivalent of about 5 million households to be a community solar partner by 2025. And with that, they have 2 different programs, the National Community Solar Partnership Program, and that is the request before you today. We'd like to be an official signer of the Memorandum of Understanding with the Department of Energy. And that is due by January 20th. So with that MOU, we would be a collaborative working group partner, and that would enable us to participate and continue to participate in peer-to-peer networking, be advertised by the DOE as a partner for New Mexico, and just other support and resources. We also would report on our progress as we go through the community solar program here in New Mexico. Just briefly, the other program, we've already been a participant and a signer of this MOU, is specifically a low income subscription tool. And this MOU allowed us to be one of the pilot states in the US. So we're one of 3 pilot states collaborating together with the National Renewable Energy Lab, and they're building a subscription software tool, and the tool will be used to market to low-income customers, specifically LIHEAP households in New Mexico. So we're already participating there, have that signed, but we are looking for the larger umbrella program MOU to be signed. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that presentation. I just had a couple of questions. I just wanted to clarify that what this request is for the PRC to sign an MOU. Does that require designation of a commissioner as a participant?
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, it requests a senior official to sign. So we would like, yes, I think Michael Smith recommended that a commissioner go ahead and sign that for us.
Okay, so this one's a little different because it does have a time deadline on it, is what I heard.
And it is a non-binding,
Yeah,
it's a non-binding MOU.
it's non-binding and non-enforceable. And it's basically an expression or willingness to work with the DOE on community solar. But there is a third leg to this as well, and DOE has a fellow program through ORISE. That stands for Oak Ridge Institute for Science and Education. And what they've done is they've offered to pay for a fellow from the DOE to work at the PRC for up to 2 years. And they would be supporting the LIHEAP software tool. It's not finalized, but it's expected soon. So there is a very good chance that the utility division would hire this person after 2 years. And it's a great opportunity. In addition to having the state's collaborative, the LIHEAP partnership, we get a free employee to help us make our community solar program successful. So we're asking you to approve a non-binding MOU and to get a free employee.
Any discussion?
Sounds like a positive thing that I would be in favor of supporting.
Are you also willing to be our designee?
I could do that
Didn't want to preempt your choice, Commissioner.
unless,
So I would move that the commission sign the non-binding MOU with the Department of Energy. And that Commissioner Ellison be the designee for the PRC to begin this endeavor.
I second that motion.
Seeing no disagreement, well, I guess I'll go ahead and take a voice vote, but all in favor, say aye.
I
Okay, motion carried. So if you could handle the details of that with Mr. Smith. Good, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent action items. There are 3 transportation items, and the item that was on the published agenda has been taken off consent. And we will discuss it after the item that's here for utility matters. So is there like a motion to approve the consent agenda or consent action items?
so moved.
Just one clarification. Are we talking about only the transportation matters? There's the utility matter that we moved to the regular action items.
Yes, it's my understanding we're just, the consent action items now consists of the 3 transportation items, and the utility matter item will be discussed under regular action items. Okay, so we have a motion to accept the consent action items. We have a second.
I second that motion.
So seeing no disagreement on that, motion carries. So next action item is our first regular action item, utility matter case 21-00266 UT. It's a potential order on some motions for rehearing for a rulemaking on interconnection standards and associated interconnection manual. That's teed up to be presented by Mr. Mueller. So Mr. Mueller, please begin your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This matter comes before the commission on the motions for rehearing in case 21-266 UT. On November 30th, 2022, the commission issued the final order adopting the amendments to Rule 568. On December 30th, 2022, PNM, EPE, and SPS filed individual motions for rehearing, requesting that the commission reconsider several portions of the final order that was issued on November 30th. On January 12th, the commission received responses to those motions from rehearing from IREC, a joint response from the Coalition for Community Solar Access, Solar Energy Industries Association and REIA, and Kit Carson Electric Cooperative and SPS. The standard of review under 1.2.2.37 NMAC requires that the motion shall specify the matters upon which the movant requests rehearing and the ground or grounds on which the movant considers the order to be unlawful, unjust, or unreasonable with regard to such matters. P&M requested that the commission reopen the record in this docket to provide for additional stakeholder engagement and argued that the commission disregarded the safety concerns raised by utilities in the proceeding, that the commission did not properly address safety concerns and technical issues raised by P&M, including concerns about feeders at capacity, utility screening based upon nameplate rating, and the use of a penetration screen based on 100% of minimum load. And their relief request was that the commission should reopen the record to hear new evidence on unclear regulations. EPE's motion similarly requested the commission reopen the record for additional evidence, schedule additional workshops, and set further deadlines for comments and response comments. They argued the utilities should be exempt from implementing the minimum load screen until December 31st, 2025, due to current technology of its distribution system, that utilities should be provided up to 12 months after publication of the rule to complete required modifications to workflows and portals, and that the rule should be revised to allow a utility to not connect a project if an applicant passes applicable screens, but the utility determines that the interconnection would be unsafe. EPE additionally requested definition of material modification be revised, a customer options meeting be added to the supplemental review step, simplified and fast track screens should be renumbered to reduce confusion. The rule should clarify if an application passes the screens that the utility is not required to provide the applicant a technical report, and that Appendix 2 is not consistent with the replacement rule. Criterion needs to be updated, and biannual reporting requirements should be eliminated. Their relief request then asked that the commission grant rehearing, reopen the record to schedule additional workshops, and set deadlines for further comment. Similarly, SPS's motion requests the commission vacate the order and reopen the record. SPS contended that the minimum load requirements in the screening process cannot be implemented by the December 31st, 2023 deadline indicated. The language allowed for modifications in response to failed screens creates a loophole that must be addressed. Section 17.9.568.21b should be revised. Section 17.9.56.29d interferes with their requirements, mandating the location of a disconnect switch. The approval and revision process for the TIIR documents should be set forth in greater detail. Inconsistencies remain between the appendix and the rule language, and the definition of parallel operation has inconsistencies with IEEE requirements. Their request for relief then is similar, that they ask that the commission grant rehearing, withdraw the final order, reopen the rulemaking record, and direct that additional workshops be held. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I've circulated a proposed order to address the request for motions to rehearing. This order would deny the motions for rehearing to reopen the record as untimely filed under Rule 1.2.2.37E, which requires any motion to reopen the record must have been filed prior to the issuance of the final order on November 30th, 2022. That distinguishes these motions for rehearing from motions to reopen the record, which is the request for relief in all of these motions for rehearing. As the commission basically could not reopen the record on the request for relief portion of these motions to order, then procedurally the motions for rehearing fail. The SPS did remark, of course, that the commission can on its own motion at any time reopen a proceeding when it has reason to believe that conditions of fact or law have so changed as to require, or that public interest requires, the reopening of such proceeding. So instead of the move-ance motion for rehearing, the commission itself can, on its own accord, reopen a proceeding or reopen the record. The order would indicate that no changes in law or fact have occurred to require reopening the proceeding, nor is the commission persuaded that public interest is served by reopening the proceeding. There are additional portions of the order that direct the move-ance that if they cannot comply with the December 31st, 2023 compliance deadline in 17.9/56815, that the rule as states allows for variances. And we are encouraging the utilities to make all best efforts to meet that deadline. But if they experience delays, that their legal course of action then would be to file a variance. And we would ask them to do that by October 1st, 2023. We expect that to, of course, comply with the requirements stated in the rule and indicate that the use of acceptable alternate means of calculating minimum loads are available until full compliance has been achieved. Regarding the request on clarification for the TIIR documents, we are asking that each utility make their draft documents available to the working group a month prior to filing with the commission for approval. Upon filing for approval, they would have parties would have 30 days to make any objections to those. We are requesting, for purposes of the community solar group, community solar rule, I should say, that the advanced inverter settings should be published by February 17th, 2023, or as the working group recommends to the commission. The other portions of the company's individual TIIR document can be submitted to the commission on a rolling basis or in one lump sum set at a future date for full review. If we do not receive a recommendation from the working group by March 3rd, the commission may, by subsequent order, propose its own deadlines and processes for the TIIR documents. The commission does not oppose the proposed recommendation by SPS that the process would indicate submitted TIIRs or amendments filed with the commission will be deemed approved and effective 30 days after filing, if not objected to by another party or the time for approval extended by the commission. I recommend the commission open a docket via subsequent order for all TIIR submissions and approvals to streamline that process. The commission is persuaded by the arguments presented by the parties that details in Appendix 2 are inconsistent. Accordingly, the order would find that Appendix 2 and references to the Appendix 2 in 568.22 be removed and that section reserved from the rule prior to publication. Since no new evidence of information is required to make that change to the rule, the record is not required to be reopened for this revision. And finally, the order would deny other requested revisions and or deletions in the motions for rehearing, as the procedural requirements for a request to reopen the rulemaking require the filing prior to the final order. We also find the remaining topics do not warrant rehearing or reopening of the record on the commission's own accord. Therefore, I would stand for any questions or ask for a motion to move the proposed order as presented.
And thank you for that presentation. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Mueller?
Just to clarify, this was a 2-year process with 17 open workshops and meetings. Is that correct? That led to these new interconnection standards?
That is correct. The initial proposed rulemaking was post filed on December 1st, 2021. The workshops happened prior to that. I don't have the exact date of when the workshops commenced, or Mike. I know Mike was part of that portion, introduced to that part of it. But it essentially has been almost a 2-year process.
And this applies to interconnection requests up to 10 megawatts, I understand. So that would include residential behind the meter PV as well as some community solar.
Yes, and any facilities with a nameplate capacity rating up to and including 10 megawatt. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so any further questions for Mr. Mueller? And
I have a comment, not a question.
yeah, I'll turn the floor over to Commissioner Aguilar.
I think you have like 3 variations of my last name right now. Yeah, so I just wanted to make a quick comment. As Hans noted in his presentation, the motions are being dismissed on procedural grounds. However, I did want to highlight one of the arguments made, which is that there are safety, reliability concerns. Those are serious, obviously, and so I just want to emphasize a part of the order that just reminds movements that or utilities rather, that if they need a variance, they can seek it. So I just wanted to make that quick comment. Thank you.
So do we have a motion to accept the order that's in front of us?
Yes, I move to accept.
I second that motion.
Then any discussion? I don't have any discussion, just echoing some of the comments from the other commissioners. The kind of things that stuck out to me was 2008, which is the date of the current rule. It's clearly obsolete in 2 years, which is the amount of time that this process has run on. So it was hard to see arguments that folks had not been considered to be compelling under those 2 circumstances.
And I guess I just wanted to add that I really see this as a process that clearly, with the existing standards being established in 2008, 15 years is a tremendous amount of time when we're talking about inverter technology and lessons learned with interconnections from Hawaii and elsewhere. And while there may be concerns that this document is not perfect, certainly it seems to be a lot better than using 15-year-old standards. And I would think that this is something that we'd want to look at revising every 2 to 3 years anyway, as technology progresses and as we get more lessons learned in the area of inverter and interconnections. So I would be in favor of going ahead and implementing the standards that have been worked out.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the order that has been presented to us. Go ahead and take a vote. Again, small body, so do a voice vote unless I hear a dissent, which I'm not expecting based on the comments. So all in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye. So motion carries and thank you, Mr. Mueller, for presenting the order and providing us with that document.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners.
Okay, so next item on the agenda is a potential protective order in the case number 22-00020-UT. Presentation by Mr. Fisk.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Actually, that first order that is listed on the agenda, as I noted in my memo on Friday, the protective order is something that we can do by single signature order, and I'm still working out the specifics of the protective order because sort of the mechanics of how that will work, of how an applicant, a potential subscriber organization, or which is essentially someone who will be bidding into the process, the window that's open right now for receiving bids for community solar projects. This protective order would address confidential information or information that they claim is confidential. They like to be treated as confidential with regard to in their applications that they're submitting currently. As Ed Rokoff, our utility division director, noted, the bid window to receive applications, it's a 2-month window, will close on January 31st. Our projects, our program administrator, and when I refer to program, that's the statewide community solar program. That's the entire program statewide as defined in the Community Solar Act itself. The commission has contracted with an administrator named Incline Inc. They have a system, an IT system set up. So the applications will be filed through this system. So I'll need to alter the commission's usual protective order to make it work for that system. So I will present that with a single signature order that can be signed later this week, or I could bring it back on next week's agenda. But I'd like to get it done this week if possible. So that first order, the potential protective order that was just read, that's the one, as I noted in my memo, that I'm not addressing today. So I'm going to move on to the potential order amending the subscriber information disclosure form. And then I will move on to the potential order concerning PNM's advice notice number 597. Unless anyone has any questions about the protective order at this time. So
I just wanted to clarify your conclusion on protective order is something that can be handled with a single signature order, and it doesn't necessarily have to happen at this meeting.
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, please proceed.
So first of all, I want to make sure that all 3 commissioners have received the revised orders, which unfortunately I had to send shortly before the meeting. I emailed them to all 3 of you. You will need to have those in front of you. There are 2 reasons that revisions were made, and I made highlighted revisions to the orders, the proposed orders that I provided on Friday. On one of the orders, the order concerning advice notice number 597, there are somewhat extensive highlighted revisions because some of the revisions are pursuant to a conversation that I had with Commissioner Aguilera yesterday. But many of them are pursuant to a filing that was made by PNM very late in the afternoon. I believe it was received at 4:30. That responds to staff's memo that I provided along with that order. So if you haven't all received my email or had a chance to open, and those are the documents you want to have in front of you. Those two revised orders replace what I sent on Friday. So is that the case? Do you all have that?
Yeah, I received the email, but frankly, I didn't have the time before this meeting to read the documents.
And Commissioner, I'm going to go through them in detail, the changes. So as long as you have them, then we're all set and I will move forward. So first of all, with regard to the potential order, the proposed order amending the subscriber information form, that one is quite simple. In March of 2022, when the commission issued its order adopting the community solar rule, which was subsequently, that rule was subsequently amended or revised prior to publication of the rule, prior to the effective date of the rule, pursuant to motions for rehearing that were filed in that matter. So like today, you had motions for rehearing presented to you with regard to the interconnection rulemaking. Well, we had them in the community solar rulemaking as well. So there was actually another order after that. But in the order adopting rule, which was issued by the commission on March 30th of 2022, the commission also adopted a subscriber information disclosure form. And that is a form that has to be filled in and provided to any potential subscriber to any particular community solar facility or community solar project by the subscriber organization. That's actually a specific requirement of the Act and also our rule, but the Act requires it. So the commission came up with this form as required by the Act, but it had an error in it, and that in two places in the form, there's a reference to direct current, DC power instead of alternating current or AC power. And the revisions that I made there were pursuant to the conversation that I had with Commissioner Aguilera yesterday. He made some good points about bringing greater clarity to the form. So if you look at what I sent today and to the order, the highlighted portions, the changes they would make would be to include two exhibits instead of one. And one of those exhibits, Exhibit A, would be a redlined version of the form, which would show the two places that are being changed by this order from DC to AC. And looking at the form, sorry about that. A lot of documents open. So the new Exhibit A to the form would be a redlined version of the form that would show the two places where DC is changed to AC. And that is under terms and conditions of the subscriber agreement, subscription size. It said that's the size of the individual, the subscriber who is subscribing to the organization's facility. It said kilowatt DC, so say kilowatt AC, and then there's right above that where there's a community solar project information. In other words, information about the entire facility that's being built. There'd be project versus project nameplate capacity. It would change from in kilowatts DC to kilowatts AC. So that's a pretty simple change. I think it's pretty uncontroversial. It's something we discovered recently, so I would simply change that. I also made a couple of other changes, or one other change pursuant to my conversation with Commissioner Aguilera yesterday. We had talked about in the jurisdictional statements, paragraph 5, where it says the commission has jurisdiction over this matter, to add the what provides the statute that provides jurisdiction to the commission, which I think if the commission wants to consider that, I haven't discussed it yet with the rest of OGC, but it certainly makes sense in our jurisdictional statements instead of simply saying that to actually provide the statutory provision that provides jurisdiction. Here it would be section 6216B7 of the Community Solar Act. So I went ahead and added that in 5. That's also highlighted. And so Exhibit B would simply be what I had already attached, which is the form unredlined and the final version of the form that would actually be used. So I can take any questions on this order. I guess the commission could take a vote on this order separately from the next order. I'm not sure if Michael, if you'd prefer that. I have 2 orders and they're on different. They're both community solar orders, but they're different subject matter. I don't know if there are to be separate votes on them.
Russell, are you asking me to make that determination?
Yes. Do we? Can I go forward and talk about the other order, or should they vote on this order first? I actually did them as separate orders.
If they're 2 separate orders, there should be 2 separate votes.
Okay, so commissioners, if you'd like to ask me any questions, I stand for questions, and then the commission can take a vote on my order or not. So I will await any questions.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Could I just clarify, Mr. Fisk, exactly the key question before us on this order? Is it are we being asked to approve the change from DC to AC in the subscriber disclosure form?
Yes, Commissioner, I know it's a minor change, and there will, I will not be bringing every issue regarding the implementation of the community solar program before the commission. Let me give you a little overview. Our program administrator, Incline, which is a very experienced consulting firm that has administered programs in other states, will be making a lot of the decisions that aren't specifically set on the rule. They'll be making them pursuant to the rule in consultation with me, and those decisions can be essentially appealed up to the commission. So not all issues about implementation, which there will be many questions and many issues about implementation and administration of the program, will come to you. This one, even though it's so minor, had to come to the commission simply because that form was adopted in a commission order. So the change should be adopted in a commission order.
Okay, thank you. That seems fairly straightforward.
Any other questions or discussion? So just to clarify that we have an existing form that has been approved. What we'll be asked to vote on is a change to that form, and the change amounts to designation of AC versus DC.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. That is correct. And just to let the commission know where it stands, this form has not been used yet. We're actually very far from, a year or more out from the stage at which any projects will actually be completed. The stage we're at now, as I said, is we're in the bid window, which will close on January 31st. In other words, potential developers of community solar projects, which will be, if they actually end up developing them, will be called subscriber organizations under the Act, are submitting their bids through this online application process to our program administrator, Incline. And they then Incline has, I don't know what the amount of time that we've set out, I think 2 months, maybe more, to review those applications pursuant to the commission's rule, which sets out many criteria for scoring and ranking those applications. And then there will be applications approved to move forward up to the 200 megawatt cap that was mentioned by Ed Rokoff earlier today. The 200 megawatt cap is set in the Act as the initial cap for the first 2 years of the statewide community solar program. That's a cap on the total size of the program. In other words, the capacity of all projects that go forward for all three of the utilities territories is 200 megawatts. That at the end of 2 years, the commission can actually change that. And we'll be making reports to the legislature. There'll be a review of the whole initial period. The initial period is not a test period. It's a real period of time when real projects will go forward, but it's somewhat of a test period in the sense that the legislature will be reviewing what happened during that period, and some changes can be made afterwards. So, but where we stand now is there will be, after the bids are selected according to the criteria, those will go forward to what's called the interconnection process, which we've been discussing today under the interconnection rule with each utility. That's a process that takes time. There may be some projects that drop out if the interconnection costs are too high. And then once interconnection is approved, then the projects begin being built, which could take months, would certainly take months. So we're far, then it's only then that they start seeking subscribers. So this form isn't even close to being used yet. So just so you know, the revisions have, the old version hasn't been used in any way.
Thank you. So do we have a motion on this order to amend the form?
I move to amend the form.
I second that motion.
Any further discussion on that? So I'll take a voice vote. Those in favor of accepting this order to amend the form, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Fisk, could you move on to the next order, which is on the suspending advice notice 597?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So I've made highlighted revisions and you have those. But first I'll give you an overview of where this stands. I'm going to go a little beyond the memo since we've taken this off of the consent agenda. Well, I've given you an idea of where we stand with regard to implementation of the program overall. The process there are two processes going on at the same time right now, which is, as I mentioned, our program administrators receiving bid applications for projects, and the commission itself is dealing with the review and approval or suspension of the tariffs, rules and forms and agreements that are needed to implement the community solar program. Our rule required that within 60 days of the effective date of the commission's rule, which was in July, I think July 22nd of last year, that the three qualifying utilities, that's how they're defined that's how they're described in the Act, qualifying utilities, which are the three investor-owned utilities, PNM, El Paso Electric Company, and SPS, that they file all necessary tariffs, agreements, and forms within that 60-day period. And they did make filings, and we've been dealing with that since. We've done orders mostly suspending those filings for issues that were found, the commission found needed to go to a disputed proceeding. But there were also issues which the utilities were willing to try to work out informally. There's been a series of workshops, I believe 6 or 7 workshops that have been conducted by another contractor that the commission is working with, another consulting firm called GridWorks, to try to nail down standard forms of what will be the agreement between each utility and the subscriber organizations, like a standard form. It might be standard across the board, in other words, one for all 3 utilities, or it might be that each utility will have a form of agreement that they'll propose. Well, actually, we'll be receiving those on January 20th because the workshop process is over. So since we received these advice notices that from all 3 that include tariffs, agreements, and forms, there have been, I believe, 3 orders issued by the commission with regard to those advice notices. And we've actually allowed 2 to portions to go into effect. EPE's community solar bill credit calculation has gone into effect. The commission found, based on consultation with Arthur O'Donnell, who is our invaluable and indispensable advisor on this issue, and now an advisor to the commission on many issues, that they were satisfactory. They'll have to be, that was satisfactory for EP and also for SPS. So there are two parts of these tariffs, agreements, and forms that have gone into effect. And the commission was planning on doing the same with PNM's community solar bill credit calculation. Now, the calculation of the community solar bill credit is something that's actually dealt with in detail in the Act itself, the Community Solar Act, and then dealt with in even more detail within the rule that the commission adopted. We were able to make those effective because we required that those were filed as separate tariffs, just the calculations, separate from other issues that are disputed and will go on to a disputed proceeding. And the commission ordered PNM in its December 14th order to file similarly a community solar bill credit tariff that would only include that calculation, because the previous advice notice that PNM had filed included that calculation, which was what the commission wanted to approve and let go into effect. But it also included something called the minimum monthly charge, which, though it would affect those ratepayers who become subscribers and receive the solar bill credit, it wasn't part of the calculation of the solar bill credit, which is something that's laid out. As I said, it's a separable issue and laid out in great detail in the act and the rule. And the commission, as I noted in this order, I could get into the proposed order now. Out of the background, I'm into the issue now. Our records department can't take an advice notice that contains many different things, because advice notice can contain as many changes or new items as a utility wishes to include in one advice notice. It can include they included tariffs and rates and forms, but the records department can't, the commission cannot approve just one part of an advice notice. So if there is one part that the commission wants to approve, which in these cases it did, we had to require that those parts be filed separately so that the entire advice notice on every page would be stamped effective, because that's our procedure. So basically, we're trying to get PNM to do the same thing. Just give us a tariff, an advice notice filing that just has the calculation and nothing else. Well, as you can see from staff's memo, that's not what they did. They did remove the minimum monthly charge in response to the December 14th order, but they included something else called a terms of payment section. And so, you have the community solar bill calculation, and you have this terms of payment section that wasn't in the previous advice notice. So this, and then terms of payment, according to the memo, could affect the actual payment of the calculation. In other words, the calculation looks right according to the act, but these terms of payment might mean that on a monthly basis, the subscriber, the ratepayer who's a subscriber, won't get the full credit that they're supposed to get for the month. And staff finds that to be contrary to the act and to the rule. And this order would simply say, I'm skipping a little bit over some of this, but would say, have the commission find, that, sorry, now I'm on paragraph 7, which is where the commission's find. Oops, I'm sorry, I have 2 paragraph 7. This should be, I'll have to I'm sorry about that. I'm on page 3 of the proposed order, and I'll renumber these paragraphs because I see that there are 2 7s. But the second paragraph 7, which I'm just going to read it. It would say that the commission finds, this is the proposed order, the commission finds that staff's recommendation to suspend is reasonable. The commission will consider AN 597, advice notice 597, a contested issue to be addressed in the commission's upcoming expedited formal proceeding concerning the tariffs, rules, and forms proposed by the three qualifying utilities. It appears that PNM's addition of terms of payment may have the effect of limiting the amount of the solar bill credit that is paid out in any particular month. The commission finds that whether this is so and whether the acts in the rule allow this should be included as issues to be decided in the formal contested proceeding that the commission will commence in the near future. The commission's December 14th order requires the qualifying utilities to provide a statement of disputed issues on or before January 20th, 2023, and this issue should be included by PNM in the statement. I'm just going to go on because that is the best way to just describe PNM's recent filings regarding this. Paragraph 8, which I'll have to renumber, says PNM itself requests in the motion, because they filed a motion for clarification regarding the previous advice notice orders, that AN 597 be suspended for consideration in the upcoming proceeding. In the motion, PNM does not address the added terms of payment, instead addressing the minimum monthly charge as a disputed item to be addressed in the formal proceeding. This is a motion that was filed concurrently with advice notice 597. So it addressed what had been addressed in the previous order and didn't say anything about the fact that when they were filing advice notice 597, concurrently with this motion, that they had added something else. Okay, so just go on from the order. The commission finds that the issues raised by the terms of payment, though related to the solar bill credit, are separable from the consideration of the calculation of the solar bill credit. Just as any issues raised by PNM's proposed minimum monthly charge are separable from the calculation of the solar bill credit. In the December 14th order, the commission found as follows regarding the minimum monthly charge. And this quotes from the order. However, both AN 591, advice notice 591, and advice notice 594, the previous advice notice, include the monthly minimum charge, which is not properly part of the community solar bill credit tariff. The calculation of the solar bill credit is addressed specifically in the Community Solar Act and in the Community Solar Rule, in the Commission's Community Solar Rule. Though the monthly minimum charge, if allowed to go into effect, would impact those ratepayers who receive the community solar bill credit, it is not part of the calculation of the credit. And I'm going to go on because this goes to what PNM raised in its motion, and it's also the response, which is the late filing yesterday, which is a response to staff's memo. Any issues arising from PNM's proposal of a monthly minimum charge, as well as any issues arising from PNM's proposed terms of payment, will be considered contested issues for the formal proceeding. The commission rejects PNM's contention that the commission's requirement that PNM remove the monthly minimum charge from PNM's solar bill credit tariff constituted a denial without hearing of the proposal itself. That is not so. The above quoted language, which I just read, of the December 14th order shows that the commission ordered the minimum monthly charge removed from the solar bill credit tariff because it was separable from the solar bill credit calculation. The commission's clear purposes were to allow the calculation of the solar bill credit proposed by PNM to become effective and to preserve separable contested issues for consideration in the upcoming formal proceeding. As the commission stated in its notice of errata issued on November 10th, 2022, via single signature order, quote, the practice of the commission's records department is to stamp an advice notice that is allowed to go into effect, effective on every page of the advice notice, and not to differentiate among different portions of an advice notice in this regard, end quote. Therefore, the commission required PNM to file an advice notice that included only the calculation of the solar bill credit, so that the calculation itself and only the calculation itself could become effective promptly. PNM has failed to comply with the December 14th order. And then the next paragraph just says, as the formal proceeding will be commenced in the near future, the commission does not here issue yet another order to PNM to file an advice notice containing only PNM's proposed solar bill credit calculation. And since we're going to be receiving on January 20th, the utilities proposed versions of the agreements that will, or agreement, it might be one, that will be in place between PNM, each utility and subscriber organizations. And then they'll also be filing a statement of disputed issues. That might be one for all three or three different ones to go forward for disputed proceeding. I'll bring this before the commission next week for an order, laying out how that formal expedited proceeding will proceed. So with that, I will take any questions.
You go ahead, Commissioner.
Mr. Fisk, I have a few clarifying questions. The advice notice 597 from PNM, does this cover community solar only?
Yes, Commissioner. Yes, only community solar. It addresses specifically community solar.
And it covers the subscriber information disclosure form that hasn't yet been distributed. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. That is something that will be filed, I believe, with an advice notice from each of the utilities. They'll probably have different forms of agreement. I doubt they'll have all the same ones. So I believe they'll be filing on January 20th. They'll file those forms of agreement with advice notices, because those forms are just like utility forms, utility agreements, utility rules, because they have their own rules with their customers, just like rates get filed with advice notices as part of advice notices with the commission. And those are, what's attached to those is the actual specifications, and if they are allowed to become effective. So those things then end up posted on our website and are available to the public as the actual tariffs, forms, and agreements that are in place for a particular utility, if allowed to go into effect.
Okay, could you please describe in a nutshell what advice notice 597 does cover?
The advice notice does cover the calculation of the community solar bill credit. And that's something, as I said, that's laid out in some detail in the Act. First, there's a calculation of this total aggregate retail rate, which is actually defined in the Act. And then that becomes, with some adjustments that are also described in the Act and in our rule, the community solar bill credit rate. Each utility has a different rate, and that's the rate at which subscribers who are also utility customers will be credited on the utility bills per kilowatt hour that their subscription to a project provides. So this is one of the main duties of the utilities under the Act, is that on each monthly bill for any of their ratepayers who subscribe to a community solar project, they have to include this solar bill credit, and so that it credits them for the amount of kilowatt hours that were provided to the grid, to the utilities grid, by the subscriber the month before. So that is whatever size the subscriber's subscription is within the community solar project. How many kilowatt hours they've subscribed to, multiplied by what was provided, their percentage, what was provided by the project to the utility. So that's what they get credit for. And they get credit at this rate, the solar bill credit rate. And the commission was ready to approve just that calculation of the credit as it had for EPE and SPS. But we needed a clean version of the tariff that didn't include anything else, and the PNM removed part of it. Yes, and so they've included that in this terms of payment, which actually affects how they'll be paid. So it's not acceptable.
And if we suspend consideration of this advice notice, what are the ramifications of that? Would that mean that community solar is not able to go forward, and P&M service territory until this is resolved?
That is correct, but there will have to be a community solar bill credit as well as many other tariffs or rates and forms, et cetera, in effect when we get to that stage, the stage of actually having projects up and running and actually providing energy to the system, to the grid. Which is, as I said, a long way off. So this suspension, just like the suspension of any other type of advice notice, simply allows the commission more time to review a matter more than the 30-day effective date that's usually stated in an advice notice. Here we have a special case. P&M didn't even put the effective date on that they were required to because they want it to go to a disputed issue. They have misconstrued previous orders of the commission as having rejected things like the monthly minimum charge, whereas the commission wasn't doing that, as that's why I quoted a previous orders. The commissioner was saying these are separable issues. We want to approve your calculation of the credit. We don't want to approve a minimum monthly charge, but we're not rejecting it. We just will consider it. We know everybody knows there's a formal proceeding coming. We're trying to get as many things resolved informally as possible before the proceeding, but that's it. Now, January 20th is when we'll get that statement. So suspension just means the commission needs more time to consider it. And because the Community Solar Act doesn't have any specific deadlines with our statutory periods within which the commission can suspend an advice notice, like the Public Utility Act has a 12-month, and if you extend it, a 12-month period for consideration of rate cases. This, we have an open-ended, commission has an open-ended suspension period. So the order says suspension until further order of the commission. But I will be recommending next week that this proceeding be expedited. Maybe it could be before the commission, it could be before a hearing examiner to hammer out all the issues with the tariffs, rates and forms, within maybe half a year or less. The solar bill credit, the reason that the commission wanted to get all three of the credit calculations approved was that, as per the recommendation of our consultant, Arthur O'Donnell, and as per the input that had been given in the rulemaking process, a lot of the developers said, we need to know how the utilities are going to calculate the solar bill credit in order to formulate our bids. We need to sort of incorporate that information into our bids, and the bidding process is open right now. So, but I've been informed by Mr. O'Donnell that because we have already signaled that the calculation of the credit is acceptable, the fact that P&M we haven't actually approved it to become effective is not a hindrance to the developers because they know that we're okay with that calculation. I know this was a lot of background to provide, but I'm glad I did because unfortunately, not unfortunately, but there is a lot of background and it all seems to come up on every issue that comes up in community solar. So I hope that gave you an idea of where it stands right now.
Great, thank you. That was helpful.
Any other questions or discussion? So to summarize, we have in front of us a order to suspend advice notice 597. My summary of why that order says to suspend it is because it doesn't follow the advice notice presented, doesn't follow previous instructions, and suspension just suspends it, and there will be further process to get to the advice notice that's required. So I guess invite any discussion or debate on that if you have a different understanding. Then do we have a motion to accept the order presented to suspend advice notice 597?
Yes, I move to accept.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. And then through the course of the meeting and comprehensive presentation by Mr. Fisk, I was able to catch up on the documents that we were provided before this meeting, so I feel I'm in a position I can vote on this, so. Again, voice vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So. Commission approves the order presented to us to suspend advice notice 597.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Fisk. All right, so next item on the agenda is communications with commissioners. I guess I would appreciate again a reminder from Mr. Smith what that is.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, it's an opportunity for the commissioners to raise issues that were not purely matters on the agenda, that are matters that they may want to bring to each other's attention and discuss.
Thank you. Does anyone have a item you'd like to bring up?
Not at this time.
Neither.
Okay, I just want to reiterate a discussion we already had, and I appreciated your suggestion earlier, Commissioner Ellison, that I really do think we should look at the portfolio of items that require a New Mexico commissioner to participate in, and hopefully come together and use our strengths to staff those roles well. So I'm looking forward to that. And so far, I've received a couple invitations for speaking opportunities. The one I've accepted is Engineers Week lunch in February. And then I'll be attending a conversation around greenhouse gas accounting. That is Friday afternoon. So among other Western commissioners. So just want to make sure you are aware of that. And as we move forward, as you know, those are the two things I've accepted, especially this greenhouse gas accounting conversation. That's going to be an ongoing thing. If that's something that fits better within somebody else's portfolio, I'll be happy to hand it over, but just thought it was important to attend a meeting that will happen on Friday. All right, so no further communications with commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I actually have just one thing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Smith, and turn here.
Thank you. In connection with what you were just raising, I just wanted to raise it with the commissioners that if the commissioners are planning on attending events, various events, right now we have the legislature going. So there may be things that are of interest to specific commissioners. It would be helpful if the Office of General Counsel was made aware of what your intent is in attending events like that, because we issue what's called a notice of quorum at an event. And now that we're down to 2 commissioners being a quorum, that's more likely than it used to be. And that basically does not, it's really not a notice that we are violating the Open Meeting Act or anything of that nature. What it is just a full transparency item that we do, we issue that basically says, we don't believe that this is a matter that requires noticing a meeting of the commissioners when a quorum, which applies when a quorum of the commission gets together to discuss public business, take action, formulate policy under the Open Meeting Act. But rather, what we do is because there are criminal violations attached to potentially to a violation of the Open Meeting Act, we issue this in a matter of full transparency to let the public know that a quorum of commissioners may be in attendance at an event. That way to basically obviate the need for issuing an agenda or something of that nature, because again, we don't believe it implicates the Open Meeting Act. But we wanted to make it clear that we're aware that the Open Meeting Act, has its requirements, and that basically telling the public in advance that the quorum is attending an event, and we don't believe that it constitutes an Open Meeting Act, implicates the Open Meeting Act. And again, that's just sort of a prophylactic against a claim that somebody said commissioners intentionally violated the Open Meeting Act. So that's kind of a long way of saying, let us know where you're going so we can issue one of these. And in connection with that, one of the events that I do think you probably would be interested in attending are the presentations of the budget to the House Finance Committee and the Senate Finance Committee. I believe you've got notification that that's going to take place on the House Finance Committee is it Friday, January 27th at 1:30 over at the State Capitol, and the Senate Finance Committee will be Monday, January 30th at 1:30. So we would, in anticipation of that, I think we're going to issue a notice of quorum on those matters.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. And then also thanks for pointing out the Legislative Finance Committee hearings or the Legislature Committee hearings on our budget. So in that vein, does anybody else?
Yeah, so I plan to go to the NARUC meeting. I forget the exact dates, but it's the Winter Policy Summit. And I'm sure that the other, the chair and Commissioner Ellison have received an invitation. So if they plan to go to that, Michael, that's something that we would want to issue a notice for.
And those events are probably also worth thinking about when we do get to establishing our open meeting calendars. I don't know, I think practice has been maybe not for the NARUC conferences, but other conferences or events where the three of us should be in attendance. Those are obvious dates to maybe not have an open meeting. All right. Can we just adjourn or do we need a motion?
Do it either way.
ERC out.